You see, time is not random. It is layered. It carries rhythm, pattern, and intention. And whether you believe in a divine creator or not, history itself reveals that certain moments, certain windows in time, carry more weight than others. They are like hinges in the flow of reality. The beginning of August, this specific transition, is one of those hinges. Why August? And why now? Because this is a time in which cycles, natural, spiritual, historical, are converging. It is not superstition, it is observation. In many ancient traditions, particularly those rooted in Hebrew scripture, this time of year marks the beginning of deep introspection, correction, and divine evaluation. It's no accident that many significant biblical events, warnings, judgments, calls to repentance, occurred in late summer. This isn't just ancient law. It's a spiritual law. When time turns, so do the tides of consequence. But we're not talking about abstract dates on a calendar. We're talking about the psychology of awareness, of readiness. Human beings, by nature, prefer comfort. We avoid tension. We distract ourselves from discomfort by clinging to routine. And so, when a month like August begins, a month that shakes the routine, that invites confrontation with what's real, we tend to resist it. But resistance to truth doesn't stop its arrival. It only deepens the shock when it finally hits. Think about this: every system in your life, your habits, your beliefs, your relationships, is built on a foundation. That foundation either aligns with truth or it doesn't. The start of August, spiritually speaking, is like an earthquake that tests the hidden layers. The vibrations may be subtle, internal, a sense of unease, a series of coincidences, a feeling that something just under the surface is shifting. Or they may be more visible: financial disruption, sudden conflict, unexpected loss or change. And yet all of it is part of a divine pattern, because only through shaking can the false be separated from the true. This is not about panic. This is about preparation. And preparation, in this context, is a kind of awakening. It means becoming aware of the deeper rhythm that governs life. Not just the day-to-day tasks, but the purpose behind them. The why behind the what. Philosophically, it challenges us to step outside of linear thinking. We are trained to move in straight lines, progress, goals, schedules. But life, especially spiritual life, moves in cycles. What was returns, what is echoes what will be. If you pay attention to the repeating patterns, both in the world and in your own inner life, you'll start to see the signals, the signs, the seasons that return, not to punish, but to invite clarity. The beginning of August is one such signal. It is a moment that calls not just for reflection, but for recalibration. If you've been drifting, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, this is the time to realign. If you've ignored the quiet voice within, this is the time to listen. If you felt the pressure building, this is the time to root yourself deeper. So no, it's not fear that drives this message. It's awareness. It's the recognition that to live fully, you must live attentively. That danger is not always an external threat. It is often the slow erosion of what's true, unnoticed until it's nearly gone. The start of August gives you a chance to stop that erosion, to rebuild, to remember. And if you do, if you take this moment seriously, what begins in danger can end in destiny. The fire doesn't only burn, it also refines. There's a kind of silence that can be more dangerous than noise. A silence that doesn't come from peace, but from disengagement. The start of August carries with it a spiritual disturbance, a kind of unseen turbulence in the atmosphere. And yet, most people will glide into it unaware, absorbed in the next task, the next scroll, the next distraction. That is the real danger, not the storm itself, but our blindness to it. You might ask, if something is stirring beneath the surface, why can't we feel it? The answer is both simple and confronting. We've trained ourselves not to feel, not deeply, not consciously. In a world of overstimulation, true sensitivity, especially to the spiritual, is often numbed. The soul becomes dulled not through evil acts, but through constant noise, comfort, and distraction. Like a man who has lived too long in a bright city, we forget what darkness looks like. And worse, we forget how to see in it. The beginning of August is not inherently dark, but it is a threshold, one that requires eyes open, ears tuned, and hearts engaged. And yet, most walk into it with closed senses. This is why danger multiplies in such seasons, not because evil is stronger, but because awareness is weaker. And when awareness weakens, resistance collapses. The greatest battles are often lost before the enemy even strikes, lost in the mind, in the quiet surrender to convenience. Now understand, this isn't just about the individual, it's also collective. Societies fall asleep, cultures fall asleep, spiritual communities fall asleep. It begins subtly, through compromise, distraction, fatigue. What was once sacred becomes familiar. What was once unacceptable becomes normalized. And by the time the storm arrives, people no longer remember what clarity feels like. They confuse stillness with peace, numbness with safety. Philosophically, it's a kind of spiritual amnesia, a forgetting not just of truth, but of the need to seek it. And once you forget to seek, you fall prey to whatever narrative is loudest. This is how deception spreads, not as a scream, but as a lullaby. You don't wake up because someone shook you. You wake up because you stopped pretending to be asleep. That's the invitation this season holds. Spiritually speaking, there is always movement. Nothing is static. You are either awakening or you are slipping into unconsciousness. There is no neutral ground. This is why the turbulence at the beginning of August matters. It is a signal that the current is shifting, that something unseen is pressing against the fabric of what we call normal. Whether it erupts in world events or remains quiet in the soul, the shift is real. But here's the good news: awareness is a choice, and like a muscle, it can be rebuilt. When you begin to notice, truly notice, the patterns around you, the emotions within you, the subtleties of thought and habit, you begin to reclaim your inner authority. You begin to see the storm not as a threat, but as a teacher. You begin to recognize that every moment of turbulence is also a moment of invitation to anchor yourself, to examine your foundations, to return to what is essential. So what does that mean for you? Now, today, in this very moment. It means stop scrolling through your own life. Wake up. Take your hands off autopilot. Ask yourself, what am I ignoring that's quietly shaping me? What am I tolerating that's draining me? What truth have I silenced in the name of convenience? The beginning of August isn't here to punish you. It's here to alert you. The danger isn't the storm outside, it's the sleep within. Wake up before the shaking wakes you. When most people think of judgment, their minds immediately drift to something external: nations falling, systems collapsing, catastrophes erupting. But true judgment, the kind that actually transforms, doesn't begin out there. It begins in here, in the heart, in the inner sanctuary, in the places no one sees but you. That's where the real shaking happens. And that's what makes it so dangerous. The beginning of August brings with it a kind of spiritual confrontation, not necessarily with the world, but with the self. This is where the discomfort lies, because it's easier to point at the chaos outside than it is to face the disorder within. But if you look at history and you study the nature of divine justice, not just from scripture, but from the patterns of cause and effect throughout human behavior, you'll find a striking truth. Collapse often begins with corruption that was tolerated for too long, not the loud, obvious kind of corruption, but the subtle kind, the quiet compromises, the justified lies, the small, daily betrayals of what we know to be right. This is why judgment begins in the house of God. Because you cannot heal the world if the root of the world's sickness is thriving in your own camp. You cannot speak truth to a crumbling culture while building your life on self-deception. It would be like trying to purify water while pouring it into a dirty vessel. Sooner or later, the vessel must be cleansed. But let's not confuse this with condemnation. That's not the nature of this season. This shaking, this testing, is not to destroy you, it's to refine you. Like fire to metal, the purpose is not to consume, but to expose the impurities and make you stronger. That process, however, demands honesty, and honesty demands courage. Because to see yourself clearly is not always pleasant. In fact, it rarely is. But it's the only path to true transformation. Philosophically, you could say that self-judgment is the highest form of spiritual intelligence. It means you're no longer deflecting. You're no longer blaming. You're no longer hiding behind theology, identity, or tradition. You're standing before your own soul and you're asking, is this who I truly am? Or have I become a collection of reactions, habits, and expectations? When you begin to ask those kinds of questions, you step into alignment with reality. And reality, no matter how painful, always offers redemption. It always offers clarity. That's what this moment in time is pressing on. The beginning of August is a mirror. It doesn't create the flaws. It simply reveals them. And once revealed, you have a choice: ignore them and protect the illusion, or confront them and step into integrity. The choice is not without cost. Integrity always requires sacrifice of ego, of comfort, of old narratives. But what you gain in return is priceless: a foundation that cannot be shaken, a soul that cannot be manipulated, a life that is no longer built on the fear of being found out. So what does this mean, practically? It means stop waiting for change to come from the outside. Start it from within. Examine your thoughts, your motives, your responses. Don't just ask, what am I doing? Ask, why am I doing it? Don't just look at the results, look at the roots. This is the kind of deep inner work that changes not only individuals, but entire cultures. Because the moment you purify your own house, you begin to shift the energy of the house around you. The beginning of August invites us to look inward, not with shame, but with sacred responsibility. Because if we can judge ourselves rightly, we won't need to fear the judgment that comes from beyond. When the shaking begins, let your house be one that stands, not because it was hidden, but because it was honest. There are moments in history when the structures we've come to rely on, economic, political, even cultural, begin to tremble. Not always with a crash, not always with an explosion, but with quiet shifts. Subtle tremors, patterns that only become clear in hindsight. And the beginning of August in this moment carries the weight of such a shift. Look closely and you'll see it: uncertainty in markets, instability in global leadership, rapid technological advancement without ethical grounding. These are not isolated events, they are signals. Systems we once trusted to provide safety or predictability are revealing their fragility. But that's not something to fear. It's something to understand. Because when a system becomes unstable, it is no longer aligned with truth. It is merely surviving through illusion. And illusions can only last so long. What we're witnessing now is not a random disruption. It's a recalibration. The old paradigms of control through fear, of economic dependence, of blind political allegiance, are beginning to collapse under their own weight. Philosophically, this is what always happens when a structure drifts too far from its original integrity. And spiritually, it's a reminder that no human-made institution is above accountability. But here's the real danger: when external systems collapse, internal panic often follows. People feel lost. They reach for anything that promises certainty, even if that certainty is built on manipulation or control. And that is where discernment becomes critical. In times like these, the most dangerous enemy isn't the instability. It's the desperation that follows it. The beginning of August may mark more than just economic uncertainty. It may trigger a psychological and emotional response in millions of people. A fear-driven reaction. Sudden shifts in currencies, news of alliances forming or breaking, unexpected policy changes. Any of these could signal the early stages of a much larger transformation. But here's the deeper insight: disruption is not the enemy of growth. It is the soil in which it grows. What matters most is how you interpret the shaking. Do you see it as collapse, or do you see it as clearing? Because when the ground splits, it can either become a chasm or a path. This is where your spiritual and psychological preparation comes in. Because those who are grounded will not be shaken. Not because they predicted every move in the markets or memorized political forecasts, but because they are not dependent on the system to define their stability. They've cultivated a deeper anchor, one rooted in clarity, in values, in unchanging principles. This doesn't mean you ignore what's happening. It means you observe with wisdom rather than react with fear. It means you prepare, not in panic, but with presence. You understand that true security is not found in what you possess, but in what possesses you. And if what possesses you is peace, discernment, and integrity, then no shift can steal your footing. So pay attention. Don't just scroll past the signs. Don't get lost in noise or caught in ideological battles. Stay centered. The start of August may shake the world, but it also gives you an opportunity to reset your relationship with power, with control, and with the systems you serve. Ask yourself, am I building my life on foundations that are crumbling? And if so, what truth must I return to? Because in the end, it's not the system that will save you. It's the strength of your inner alignment. When the world trembles, let your presence be what doesn't move. Not all storms come to destroy. Some come to expose. Others come to push us beyond our limits, beyond our assumptions, beyond the narrow version of ourselves that we've grown too comfortable with. The beginning of August will bring personal battles to the surface. And while some will interpret this as chaos, the wise will recognize it as a necessary confrontation. Because what you're facing isn't random. It's revealing. It's revealing what still controls you, what still triggers you, what you still avoid. Pressure, in this way, is a teacher. It doesn't ask politely. It doesn't wait for your permission. It arrives unannounced and demands your full presence. Some of you will feel this in your relationships. Old wounds resurfacing, difficult conversations, separation from people you once leaned on. Others will feel it financially. Unexpected expenses, instability, the sense that you're losing grip on what you thought was secure. Still others will feel it internally. Emotional turbulence, mental exhaustion, a low but persistent sense of disorientation. This is the battle. But it's not the kind that requires fists or fury. It's the kind that requires stillness, clarity, and unwavering inner discipline. And it begins the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is this revealing in me? Philosophically speaking, discomfort is not the enemy of growth. It is its birthplace. Without tension, there is no transformation. You don't become strong by avoiding resistance. You become strong by facing it and by staying centered in the midst of it. This is what August is inviting you into: not more action, but deeper attention. Not more control, but more surrender to what is essential and real. The mind will try to convince you that these disruptions are signs of failure. But failure is not falling. It's staying down when you've fallen. What most people call failure is often just the point at which the old self can no longer carry the weight of the next assignment. And so, it must break. It must release its grip, not to destroy you, but to invite something new through you. The greatest breakthroughs don't arrive quietly. They often enter disguised as difficulty, as inconvenience, as loss. But when you observe closely, when you choose presence over panic, you begin to see patterns. The same conversations repeating, the same fears returning, the same limitations tightening their grip. This isn't punishment, it's precision. Life keeps returning to the same lessons until you embody the wisdom required to transcend them. This month will challenge your emotional stability. It will test your patience. It may even expose how much of your peace is conditional, based on circumstances, validation, or control. And when those are taken away, what's left? That is the real question. Because that is the foundation of your spiritual life. Not what you say you believe, but what remains unshaken when everything else is tested. So if the battle intensifies, don't resist it blindly. Engage it consciously. Sit with it. Study it. What thought patterns are surfacing? What emotional reactions are rising? What internal voices are the loudest? There is wisdom buried in the chaos, if you are willing to listen long enough to hear it. Growth isn't something you achieve. It's something you surrender to. It comes not from controlling the storm, but from becoming the kind of person who can walk through it with clarity, with strength, and with grace. So when the battle comes, don't run, don't numb yourself, and don't pretend it's not happening. Stand, observe, breathe. Let the fire refine, not consume, because the battle was never meant to break you. It was meant to introduce you to the part of you that cannot be broken. We often think warnings are about danger, that they exist to trigger fear, to make us retreat, to cause us to shield ourselves from the unknown. But that's only a shallow reading of what a warning really is. If you look deeper, psychologically, philosophically, spiritually, you'll see that a warning is not meant to cause paralysis. It's meant to provoke clarity. It's not just a sign to stop, it's a call to start. This season, this very beginning of August, isn't merely announcing danger. It's issuing a commission to step into your role, to recognize that the moment isn't just happening around you, it's happening through you. You are not a bystander in this shaking. You are being summoned to participate in it. Consciously, courageously, with a heart that is no longer seduced by comfort or delay. You see, it's easy to wait for someone else to speak up. Easy to think that leadership is for a chosen few, that only the boldest or most spiritual are responsible for shifting culture, for protecting truth, for embodying discipline. But that idea is a lie dressed in humility. Because every time you silence your inner knowing, every time you withhold your contribution because you think you're not ready or worthy, the world loses something it cannot replace. Your clarity, your voice, your example. The greatest danger in moments of transition isn't chaos, it's passivity. The idea that we can afford to wait, that someone else will rise, that the battle isn't ours. But what if it is? What if the tension you feel inside, the restlessness, the awareness that something must change, that is your commission? Not to solve everything, not to save the world, but to act with integrity within your own square of influence. The philosopher doesn't wait for the right time to reflect. The warrior doesn't wait for the perfect battle to train. And the awakened human doesn't wait for comfort to speak truth. The beginning of August may feel heavy. Yes, it may feel uncertain. But that is the nature of every threshold. Before you walk through, you will question your readiness. Before you rise, you will feel the weight of what rising means. But readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision to respond to what life is showing you right now, to engage with what is real instead of avoiding it, to stop rehearsing the idea of your future self and begin living it, however imperfectly, right here, in this conversation, in this hour, in this beginning. And this is the essence of a commission. It does not ask you to be fearless. It asks you to act even while afraid. It does not demand perfection. It demands presence. You are not being asked to be someone else. You're being asked to be fully yourself, without apology, without delay, without hiding behind the illusion of more time. So if you've been waiting for a sign, for confirmation, for clarity, the sign is not coming. It's already here. It's in the unrest. It's in the urgency. It's in the awareness that the world is shifting and that your silence, your absence, your hesitation would be a form of retreat. This is not the time for retreat. It is the time for response. The beginning of August is not your enemy. It's your doorway. Walk through it, not with fear, but with the quiet strength of someone who understands, I was made for this moment, not later. Now,